Shit.
Hands on him! Take her! She's empty!
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Bloody been an interesting week. Fucking the petition for a new election in England because Keir Starmer's a totalitarian nutbag and wants to tax farmers out of their land and then sell land to BlackRock. The idea being that BlackRock and government coalition then control the farming land, by extension the farming land, the food. Hence massive farmer protests, and now we have a petition to literally get rid of Starmer. And I don't know if you guys know anything about political petitions. Usually they, big ones are usually like 40,000 or so. I think COVID, to do with the mandates, was about like 400,000 in Australia. Like, they don't normally get that big. But in the UK, the one to call for a new general election to get rid of Starmer is now up to like 1.8 million as of this video. And it's looking like it's going to get more than that as well. What an absolute repudiation of Marxist, communist, totalitarianism, Starmer's bullshit in general, centralized government. Like, I was watching a Lotus Eaters video the other day, and his whole political career has been getting rid of the death penalty for criminals and fighting for criminals that have, committed heinous crimes. Oh, and also, ensuring the freedom of movement of terrorists and that sort of deal throughout his entire political career. Don't get me wrong, infringing on individual rights is fucking horrible, but if you're talking about a fucking terrorist who's like literally gonna scope out an area for like a car attack where he runs people over and then stabs them while they're on the ground, or sets a bomb or something like that, if you're talking about a terrorist, I think it gets a little bit different. And if you're talking about, sentencing to death people that have, murdered people, and we're not talking about murder like manslaughter, like they got into a fight at the pub and one dude punched another dude and he went down and he hit his head, or even murder of, let's say, mildly premeditated, like the woman in Germany who shot the dude who molested her daughter and killed her daughter. Like, pulled out a gun in court and, shot him dead. Like, talking about that sort of stuff. When we're not talking about that, we're talking about, like, impulsive murder in furtherance to a crime. We're talking about the mugger that kills the person they're mugging. We're talking about the rapist that kills the person they're raping. We're like, these are very morally different murders, right? But yeah, Keir Starmer defended the latter of those. So outright terrorist freedom of movement and outright, murders of children. Like, the worst type of murder, right? The indefensible type of murder. Like the murdering of your own kid because they're crying too loud. Like that type of murder. And it's just fucking repulsive. It's like, almost like he's doing the Soviet playbook of just trying to increase the number of criminals in society. It's just like the Stalin era Soviet playbook. And then outright the attack on property rights of individuals with the inheritance tax. Like, that's just a big spit in the eye of, like, property rights. The fact that it's to do with farmers, and farmers feed people, and I don't know if you guys know this, but communists and socialists, historically speaking, haven't been great at feeding the populations. What are the numbers? Between 40 and 90 million in Maoist China, like 20 million with the Holodomor in the Soviet Union. North Korea, we don't even know. There's been several. I think like a type of dog in North Korea went extinct because they were fucking eating it. We don't even know. Several famines. But the intergenerational malnutrition of North Koreans means their height has been permanently stunted. They're like all like 5'5" and shit. Like, horrible shit, right? Horrible shit. Like, communists absolutely fucking suck. And that's what Keir Starmer pretty much is, right? And the people have seen it, and the people have spoken with their petition. 1.8 million as of this video. We live in interesting times. First, Trump gets elected. Not only gets elected with the Electoral College, the majority of the Electoral College, also wins the popular vote. And that's despite what appears to be shenanigans in some of the counties, where they got like 100,000 vote dumps like really, really late in the night, really early in the morning. I forget where it was. It was either Michigan or Wisconsin. But like, I was watching it as it happened, and he was like 200,000 ahead, 210,000 ahead-ish. And that narrowed up by like 100,000 within like 10 minutes. And it was hard to even notice when it happened, but it looked extremely fucking suspect. Like, that's shades of fucking 2020 right there. And then of course you have the glaringly obvious, where did the 85 million Biden voters go this time? Like, if you have a look at the elections across the years, it's like Obama and that's like 70 million, 70 million, 60 million, 60 million. Then you got Biden, 85 million. You got Kamala again. And I think she finished around like 70 million, something like that. But it's like fucking very obviously suspect, right? Like, very obviously there's something fucking to do there. Like, I don't even know how YouTube's policies are about this. It's like, me pointing out the fucking weirdness of that, I might get a fucking strike on my channel. Which is like fucked up when you consider like everything they directly, put people's health at risk with some of their, medical misinformation policies. Like, it's a fucking nightmare. But like, the whole thing is fucked. Like, the idea that we are essentially funding our own cultural revolution in art through pieces of shit consultants like, you know, Sweet Baby Inc. and that sort of thing, that there are government grants and things like that to do with DEI, diversity, like enforcement of government policy and, you know, political government leaning into art. And I suppose it's not correct to say enforcement of it, but let's say unconsensual taxpayer incentive, because, you know, government directly giving them money towards grants to do this. And, like, it's not just in art and video games and movies and that sort of thing. The whole thing at university as well. The whole university thing functions as, like, this fucking horrible sort of Ponzi scheme. And, like, it preys on international students in this regard. It's, like, absolutely fucked up. International students have to pay, like, you know, double hex fees for their courses and shit. And they actually have to work while they're studying to pay them off here. And that whole thing's fucking horrible. Once you factor in that the degrees might not be that useful and it's more, you know, practical skills and who you know that will actually get you the job rather than, you know, a degree, then you're looking at intergenerational people that are just never going to pay their degrees back. They're just, like, in debt for the, you know, 40 to 60 grand or whatever it is for their degree. They're never going to pay it back. They never intend to pay it back. That money exists as debt. The whole thing's like a fucking giant, you know, Ponzi scheme. Like, there's serious reform is fucking needed with universities. Like, seriously, like, that is housing market crash level fucking nonsense going on there. You either need to get rid of the useless degrees, but, like, half the useless degrees condition people into, you know, not thinking, into, like, pursuing this queer theory sort of thing, into pursuing the idea that Palestine is correct in their conflict against Israel, that their intifadas that used child suicide bombers were all justified. Like, this shit's absolutely fucking horrible, right? Like, I get it. I've seen the Twitter videos of, you know, the Palestinians pulling, you know, dead, limp children with crushed heads out of buildings. Yeah, I've seen the videos. I've also seen the videos of October 7th of the, you know, the women with the burnt faces and shit, with their skirts pulled up around their waist, left out in the sun. And I've seen them, you know, the videos of the dead dog, I've seen the people shot, I've seen the video of the Hamas insurgents trying to behead, for some reason, some Thai guy that they shot through the gut with a garden hoe, while, you know, inconveniently for the left yelling Allahu Akbar, which it means, you know, God is great. But the university seems to condition the idea that it is all material to them, that we have somehow equivalent values. And because we have equivalent values, they're just seeking some sort of revenge for, you know, bringing a war they started. Like, Israel didn't really have a choice not to invade Gaza when Hamas took the hostages and retreated into Gaza. Like, people try to play that off as some sort of equivalency between the, you know, the actual terrorists that receive trials that are in Israeli prisons, convicted of terrorism, terrorist attacks on civilians, and, you know, Israeli military checkpoints. Like, these people, like, of whom Sinwar was one of these people and was released in a hostage exchange. They're trying to draw, like, an equivalence between the hostages, civilian hostages, you know, caught during a massacre by Hamas on October 7th, and the people held in Israeli prisons for terrorism. It's absolutely wacky. Like, there's no equivalence to be drawn there. And, like, the whole propaganda around it, like saying, oh, 40 million Palestinians. Mind you, when they say 40,000 Palestinians or whatever have been killed, they don't distinguish between militants and civilians. And there is actually a distinction to be made between women and, you know, legally children because they're under 18, and insurgents as well. Because, as mentioned before, during the Second Intifada, they were using child suicide bombers to kill civilians and Israelis. Like, this is, you know, the thing, right? It's not nice to say, but some forces actually do use child soldiers and do use women to, you know, plant bombs and conduct attacks on civilians and all that sort of deal. Like, I can't remember who it was. Like, one of the ladies' names, she was one of the first Hamas leaders elected, and I'm pretty sure, but they have scrubbed the internet of this. She was famous because she used, I think, at least one of her children as a child suicide bomber. Like, don't quote me on that. They have scrubbed the internet since, but I'm pretty sure it's the same woman. They absolutely scrubbed the Wikipedia page to do with it, which, you know, yeah. But it's, like, absolutely fucking horrible. Like, we're caring more about their dead children than they are, seemingly, in the West. And even the people that are pushing it, like the pro-Palestine people, the free Palestine people, their care for the dead Palestinian children seems to be deceptive, and like they're using it as a political tool, like, rather than, you know, being upset at the dead children in the first place. Like, and that's absolutely fucking horrible. Like, because any sensible person would be able to tell you, you can't create a peace with Hamas. Like, Hamas, unprovoked, done October 7, have stated they will do more October 7th. If you leave them alive, they will continue to do October 7th. So they hold that potential just for more civilian deaths, right? It's... what, so you're going to create, like, a ceasefire or a peace with Hamas? You're going to get your hostages back, and then they're going to wait until they have another weakness, like they had on October 7th. They're going to do a massacre, they're going to do grab another bunch of hostages and repeat the whole thing over again. Like, that's practically what you're talking about. And they're never going to stop, because they're, like, divinely justified to do it. And because of the Hamas operatives deliberately using civilians as shields, resulting in the deaths of children, the parents of the dead children are never going to stop either. So you've got yourself this vicious cycle created by pretty much Hamas. And it's absolutely fucked. Like, I guess, like, critics of that position will say, Israel didn't have to drop bombs on the Hamas operatives among the civilians. Okay. But, like, it becomes this awful triage at that point. If you don't take out the Hamas operatives and they get away, then at some point in the future, they're going to kill more civilians, capture more civilians, torture more civilians, rape more civilians, like on October 7th. But if you do bomb them and take them out, just due to how densely populated Gaza is, there's a chance you kill children. And I guess you got to make that calculation based on the terrorist, based on their potential to kill civilians in the future, I guess. Like, it's fucked up. Like, the whole thing's fucked up. But Hamas is, like, the issue here. Like, if, like, Hamas, like, released the hostages and, you know, just let them go, and, like, I'm pretty sure Israel's just gonna pull out of fucking Gaza. Like, that's the only reason they're there. That's the only reason they've been drawn into, like, house-to-house fighting there. They don't want to be there. They don't want to lose men. They don't want to spend all this money on materiel, bombing it to shit. They don't want to have to deal with Hezbollah to the north and Iran at the same time when Iran's posturing with fucking nukes and shit. Like, it's just common sense. What? They're gonna seize the land, are they? First of all, it's bombed the fuck out. And Hamas ain't building shit. Whoever takes over fucking the Palestine-Gaza area now is probably not going to build shit either. They're probably going to do the same thing fucking Hamas did, was, you know, make the area fucked and then siphon as much of the aid off as you can when it gets sent in, seize it, and then siphon it off for money. Like, it's harsh to say, but, like, you gotta cut the fucking aid off. The aid's directly funding Hamas. Hamas is the problem. The symptom of the problem is, you know, all the starving Palestinians and the war effort of Hamas. But it's essentially a siege now. If you keep Gaza blockaded, the people might starve. But if you send the food in, Hamas gets the aid, probably is able to smuggle weapons in as well, probably able to sell the aid and fund other shit. It's a fucking nightmare. But it's just weak US and global policy towards terrorists. They just fucking pay them. And that's been the norm for so long now. And when you pay the terrorists, you give them, like, money and material to fucking be terrorists. They can't worry about getting food and shit from other places, just because you're paying their bills. You're putting them on terrorist welfare. It's just like, okay, since they don't need to worry about food and anything like that, food and money, because you've sent all this aid in and they've just seized it, they can literally do whatever they want. They can, you know, deliberately kill and terrify the civilians of Gaza into basically supporting them or fearing them enough to not oppose them, torturing them, etc. Like, there's been videos of, like, that gets understated as well, how Hamas fucking tortures the Gazan civilians. There's, like, videos of them, like, tying them up and beating their feet, and, like, that's a bit fucking weird in terms of torture as well, hitting them in the feet and then making them stand on their feet. There's, like, other, you know, more threatening ways you can torture people, I guess. I'm sure it fucking sucks, don't get me wrong, but, yeah. Seems a bit silly. But then, like, in addition to all of this fucking Gaza shit, you've also got this, you know, the trans ideology shit, which is just straight up the normalization of mental illness, let's be honest. If you had a schizophrenic person hearing voices, you're not gonna, you know, enable him to feel like he is actually hearing voices and it's the right thing to hear the voices, are you? If you've got someone who's, you know, gender dysphoric and they think they're the opposite sex, it's obviously a mental illness. You can create, like, an artificial genital for them. The artificial genital is not going to be hooked up to anything. It's not going to be hooked up to their brain. It's not going to be hooked up to their hormones. They're not going to be able to reproduce with it. It's literally a superficial, horrible mutilative surgery. Like, you would never do that. You would never do that with, like, the people who, you know, want to cut off their arms because they've got a cut off arm fetish. But, like, they're doing it for the people with, you know, the gender dysphoria. Yeah. And, you know, they're teaching that as normal in universities. And the universities are funded by the taxpayer. And 70% of, you know, most Western countries are Christian. So, very likely, there's a good chance that at least half the taxpayer money, assuming 70% of the countries are Christian, are going to be at least mildly opposed to the idea of, you know, all the trans surgery stuff, particularly when it comes to children. When it comes to children, it's a very unpopular topic. But then, of course, you get your barrage of leftist fallacies. You get your, nobody's talking about that, which is, you know, basically an implied appeal to popularity, which is a fallacy. Or you get your, I'll just defer to the experts on this one, which is, you know, your blind appeal to authority fallacy. Or you get your, no one serious is talking about this, which is basically an ad hominem. It's implying that you're not a serious individual. Meanwhile, these are all the freaks that are, you know, mutilating people. Mutilating mentally ill people. And like any gain in welfare that trans individuals get from surgery is going to be very fucking short-lived. Like, once you start looking into the horrible details of it, where they grow, you know, hair inside, and it's basically a wound, and they have to use the dilator to keep the wound open and all this horrible shit. I think welfare goes right out the window. Like, you wouldn't want your kid doing that. It's just absolutely messed up. And then, of course, you have social media. Leftist biased social media on all these issues with their terms of service. They've basically allowed the, well, considering, you know, they're these massive, you know, proponents of controlling the internet to prevent the spread of misinformation, they are spreading quite a bit of misinformation about all these fucking topics. Mind you, I'm not saying, you know, control the internet and stop the spread of misinformation the other way. No, just leave it alone. Maybe get rid of the terms of service that, you know, say you can't talk about certain topics. Because that's obviously fucking censorship. But yeah, political ranting over, I guess.
Oh, fuck!
You're not leaving this place! Don't let her escape! Hey! Now's our chance!